Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Freelance to Me podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Cisneros Mejia, and today you are in for a huge treat. I have the immense honor of having someone that I consider like the godfather in this freelance space, someone who inspired me a lot when I started freelancing in 2009, the one and only Ed Gandia. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Hi, Ashley. Thank you. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I have to tell you, I've read your books. I've heard you speak at many different conferences. I've heard all of your podcasts. You've had a couple different shows. And I just want to share just how much appreciation that I have for your generosity and really thinking so with so much innovation about freelance life, about freelance business for years, for a long time. You've really made a difference in my business and in the difference in the businesses of a lot of writers that I know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Freelance Fam, as usual, I always give you a little bit of a bio so you can kind of get to know Ed more. And so I'll read a little bit of that now. So, Ed Gandia is a business building coach who helps established freelance writers and copywriters earn more in less time, doing work they love for better clients. His high income business writing podcast is one of the top freelancing and writing podcasts on Apple Podcasts. And his insights and advice have been featured in Forbes, Inc. magazine, Fast Company, the Christian Science Monitor, and the Atlanta Journal Constitution, among many others. Ed, you're awesome. I know that's your formal bio, and that's just a little bit. Do you want to just introduce yourself to anybody who's been under a rock and hasn't heard of you before?
Yeah, well, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I focus on helping writers, copywriters, marketing strategists earn more in less time. To me, that's not a marketing tagline.
Mm.
I really believe in that because that is the holy grail of freelancing. At the end of the day, if you can spend less time working on client projects, get more for that, the freedom and flexibility that buys you is priceless. And so it has nothing to do with how much you work, how much you charge. I mean, those things are also very important, of course. But at the end of the day, the true measure is, for every unit of effort that I put into my business, what am I getting out of it?
Mm.
Because what I get out of it is what buys me the things that I really want, the things and experiences and opportunities and freedom that I really want.
I love it. And you have really been at the forefront of thinking about work in this way. Now in this kind of interesting time that we find ourselves after the pandemic, after the great resignation, with all of these, people are questioning, their things that are important in their life and kind of the way they approach life and business or generating income. And you have a really interesting story. Can you walk us through kind of how you got started in this space, from when you started being a copywriter to now being a coach for other writers and copywriters?
Yeah, like most of us, right? Anybody who just started out doing something, working for somebody. I never planned this. I'd never imagined that I would be here. It just all happened organically. So I started in corporate sales out of college in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. And it's the last thing I wanted to do. Like I thought, oh my gosh, the last thing I want is sales. But that's where I ended up. But just at the time, that's all I could find. It turned out to be a blessing because learning learning how to sell effectively is a skill that applies to really everything in life. It's not just in business. In selling, I learned is not about manipulation. Selling is about having an honest, open, authentic conversation. That was a game changer for me. That took a while for me to understand that. But the point is, I started in sales and I had the fortune of working for companies who couldn't really give me the resources that I needed. And I say the fortune because at the time, I thought that I was at a huge disadvantage. I had friends who were in selling jobs that were given everything, great territories, incredible company reputation, excellent products, and great commission checks, everything. I didn't have any of that. So I had to become very resourceful. And part of that resourcefulness was I need written materials that can help me get in the door somewhere. And they were different purposes, but that was a big one. How do I get in the door? How do I get a conversation started with a prospect who doesn't know me or doesn't know us? And I love this idea of, can I do that through writing? Because if I call, and I did a ton of cold calling on the phone, immediately people have serious objections, and they don't, it doesn't matter. You could be giving away gold nuggets. It just doesn't matter. So I need a way to kind of slip in. And so I started writing stuff that actually worked. And because it started working, I wanted to learn more about how to write it better, more effectively. So I bought every book that I could find. I started taking courses. I realized this thing was called copywriting. And I didn't take me long to realize that I could turn this into a business, which I did. At the time, when it finally dawned on me this could be a business, I had set a goal, and this is in 2002. I'll never forget when it happened too, because my first child was born that year, and I set a goal that I want to start a business or buy an existing business within 5 years. So by 2007. And so I went into it with that mindset, right? I'm 5 years to get out of traditional employment and start or buy a business. And it hit me eventually, wait a minute, this could be the business. I just wasn't thinking in terms of a service. I was thinking in terms of brick and mortar. So that's what I did. I started it on the side, and about 27 months later, I was able to quit my day job. This is summer of 2006, and just freelance full time. And I have looked back. I haven't really regretted any of it. So real quick though, because wait a minute, but you're not really a writer anymore. Are you a writer? I'm very open about this. So in 2012, I began coaching. Before then I had sold some training classes, some guides to help people, because everyone is contacting me. Hey, how do you do it? How were you able to do that so easily? And it wasn't easy, but I documented what I did, and I sold those products and those guides and classes. In 2012, I started coaching, which I hadn't done really formally before. In 2016, I let go of my last freelance writing client. I realized by then that coaching and training was what I really wanted to do. So yeah, that's how I ended up here. But none of this was planned. It was by accident. People reaching out to me for advice and giving it away, and realizing, well, wait a minute, I should do this, or writing my own stuff and realizing I'm actually pretty good at this. I wonder if I could do this for others. It's just paying attention.
I love that. So many gems there, especially, about those mind shifts that occurred along the way for you personally when you saw kind of the potential of what you were doing, that it could be a business. And I think that's a trend that I see in your body of work, is helping other people create those mind shifts as well. When you were talking about sales, that it doesn't have to feel slimy or aggressive. It can feel like, you're a part of the team, and that you're linking arms with your client and looking to solve a problem, and kind of demonstrating that. You've helped me also think about that mind shift of what we do as writers, or what I did as a writer, from beyond just a side hustle type of thing to a real business. How did this perspective shift impact your own journey? And why is it so vital for other writers, even those today that are brand new, to think of what they do with writing as a business?
I think for me, it was two things. First of all, because I came from corporate sales, I was very business focused, right? Very numbers driven, very business and goal oriented. So that part, it just came naturally to me. But I think maybe even more important was, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that I had it in my mind that I was going to start or buy a business within 5 years, right? So because that's the seed that I had planted, that is the filter that I had in front of me, I looked at everything as a business. And when it finally dawned on me that this could actually be the thing I was looking for, then I automatically treated it as a business from day one. And that is very different from the way I find most people. I think it's gotten a lot better, but especially back then, early to mid 2000s, the people that I was in touch with, they didn't treat it as a business. They treated it as a craft, or they thought of themselves as selling their skills by the hour or to the highest bidder kind of thing. They didn't think of it as a business, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. You know, Ed, I was just thinking about how much you have seen this industry change. I was listening to one of your very early episodes. I think it was maybe with Copy Blogger, or it might have been a different interview. But you were talking about like when you realized your talent for writing those sales letters and applying them to your sales job, and you mentioned faxing them. That used to fax them, and then now,
Yeah.
you know, recently I've heard you in 2023 on episodes and also in some of your keynote speeches talking about AI, talking about ChatGPT. So what a journey from fax machines to now we've got robots doing writing, sort of. With the rise of these tools, you've spoken a lot about this, and we know they're based on machine learning, so they're always going to change and get better. How do you see these technologies continue to impact the work that we do in 2024, kind of looking ahead?
Nobody really knows. That's the first thing we just need to admit. I'm certainly no futurist. And even when you look at futurists and their track record, 90% of what they predicted was off significantly. We tend to focus on what they got right, but if you look, most people were off. So with that, I'm going to give you my very high level prediction. And take it for what it's worth. I think right now we're in phase one of three phases, and it's going to be more phases than that, but let's just say three. In phase one is really these tools kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody was really expecting them to be what they were right out of the gate. And phase one is all about scrambling. Oh my gosh, what is this going to do? How do let me play around with it, and realizing how good it is. And thinking that that's it. I'm done. Machines are going to take my job. So
Right.
There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of overreaction. There's a lot of fear, panic, and there's a lot of tinkering. But here's the interesting thing. This is mostly coming from writers, this fear and panic. When you really look out there, you're not seeing companies replace writers like you would think. It's overinflated. The reason a lot of writers are suffering right now is mostly because of the economy, not because of AI. Is AI replacing some writers, replacing some things that we used to do as writers? Yes. But right now, the markets that are seeing it are kind of the bargain basement markets, kind of the just content mill type stuff, SEO content, just because we need to put keyword rich content out there. The people who are getting hurt for the most part, I suspect, are overseas writers who were doing this for 2 cents a word. So they're being replaced first. One metaphor that I like to use is like a great flood. Right. So there's this great flood right now, and it's really the valleys that are being impacted right now, the valley floors, where most of us, I think, are working on the side of the mountain. And even some people are at the very top of the mountain. The problem is that the valley floor is now trying to rush to the mountains to keep from drowning. Most of them are getting swallowed and drowning, unfortunately. And but it is putting a little bit of pressure on kind of the base of the mountain, the people who are there. So I think we're right now in phase one. A lot of people are tinkering, but a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, are not going there yet. There's all kinds of legal questions and risks. They don't want to go there, and until this stuff gets resolved, they don't want to use it or even allow their freelance writers to use these tools. Okay. And I'm talking about more bigger companies. But so right now there's a lot of hype and fear and panic. That's phase one. Phase two, I don't know when this is going to start, but at some point in the next couple of years, we'll enter a phase where now this becomes kind of the norm. And the best maybe analogy I can give you would be software. So back in the day when engineers and scientists used pen and paper to do math, or adding machines, or the first generation of computers, where you have to go in with punch cards and reserve time, with a computer for an hour. We're going to be now past that and kind of more in the PC world, right? Where now many people in business have a PC and they're able to do all that math in seconds and instead of hours. And that's phase two. Phase two will be this stuff now becomes more mainstream as a tool. And that's the key thing I want to emphasize. As a tool, did software replace all engineers, all scientists, all statisticians or data analysts? No. What it did is it elevated the profession it took all the grunt work out of what they were doing and enabled them to really spend time on right brain, creative thinking, problem solving, critical thinking, right? Being able to use these tools as tools to make better decisions, to do higher level work. That to me is what phase two is going to be all about. Going back to the flood, are people going to drown? Absolutely. But, what we need to do is keep moving up that mountain, okay, to higher elevation. Phase three, then a few years later, is going to be really interesting because that's when it's so hard to really see and get clarity on what that looks like. But that's going to be where now we're in a different plane. We're somewhere totally different. These tools have now become incorporated into so much of what we do, into our lives, businesses, everything. And now it's like a whole new category of jobs and freelance opportunities that we can't even fathom right now. And that's where it becomes really hard to really predict. I'm an optimist. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities, but we're going to need to pivot and shift. The good news is we will have time to do that. This is not going to happen next year. So just like with software, some people who just did everything by hand, if they insisted on that, they're going to be replaced, but if you know how to work with it, you can now move to higher levels of thinking, higher levels of work and productivity and creativity.
I love that. That's so refreshing. And it feels so different, this conversation that we're having. We're now, at the end of 2023. And yeah, panic and fear, those words that you used, that's what I felt reverberating from the writer community in January-ish. So it's so cool to see that distinction, really. And also that challenge that if we want to adapt, or we want to still be here, we want to survive on these mountains and not be in these valleys, that we'll need to continue to think with creativity and innovation and leveraging what we have as human beings, right? And I loved your topic, your keynote speech at the ASJ conference this summer, monetizing your expertise, because I think you talked about that a lot, about what are ways where you can anticipate what your client might need? How do you insert yourself in those conversations ahead of time, where you can consult and you can, maybe some of those things that we've been giving away for free, kind of as part of the writing process, really have a lot of value. Can you talk more about why writers should consider getting into this advisory service space, this consulting space, to kind of augment what we're also doing just in terms of the technical of the writing itself?
Absolutely. The idea here is that as writing becomes more and more commoditized, that is the production of words, right? The creation of content and copy. It's not that machines are going to do it. It's going to become way more efficient to produce that than ever before. So one prediction is that rates and fees are for that work alone are going to start going down. By the way, that's not necessarily bad, because if the volume that you're cranking out goes up as a result, you could end up being the same or even in a better position. So let's keep that in mind. I think the focus has been, oh my gosh, so something I used to get, $1,000 for, now I'm going to get $250 for.
Mm.
Yeah, but if you can do it in a quarter of the time or even faster, and you get more volume, then because you're able to take more with these tools, just like the math example, then we might be at parity or better. So that's one thing. The second thing is I want everyone to understand that, oh, well, I'm not an advisor. I've stopped using the word strategy, because I was saying, hey, you should sell strategy to clients. Your advice, your strategy, your expertise. I was like, well, I'm not a strategist. So I've stopped using that word. I'm using advisory for a reason. You are already advising clients. You already are. And I'll prove it to you. Have you ever been in a conversation about topic ideas? They got a couple of things they want to write, and, we got some topic ideas, but, would love your opinion on this. And what do? Well, we do what we do best, right? We brainstorm with them. We help them make that decision. It might only take us 5 minutes. It's not about the time. Think about the expertise that we've developed over the years that enables us in 5 minutes to help them make a really solid decision that could make a big difference in the number of views they get, the leads they generate, the sales they make. So we're already brainstorming, ideating with them. Messaging or positioning. You help them write some website copy or refresh the whole website copy. Well, you realize this is really outdated. They admitted, yes, that was 5 years ago. We no longer talk about ourselves that way. Well, how are you talking about yourselves now? Well, and then they go down this path of, we're saying this and that. And you realize this is a convoluted mess. Let me help you sort through that and refine it. And we just did that for free. Okay. So another great example. Many times is we have this problem. We think, we need a series of case studies to help us prove the value and offer social proof about what we have here. But we're not really sure because, we also thought of this other idea, and you help them kind of sort through it and arrive at one thing to produce now, right? That is called project road mapping. Essentially, you're helping them decide on a project. Another way to think of it is unpaid discovery. You're not getting paid for unearthing really what needs to be done and coming to a conclusion as to what needs to be done. So all these are examples of things that we're doing day in and day out that we're not charging for. What I'm suggesting is that, especially with AI, again, is it does a better job of helping with the craft of writing and making that way more efficient. We need to learn how to, first of all, use these tools to help us with ideation because they're great at that. And then start selling that as a standalone service. So in the example of, hey, we're not really sure what we need here. Great. I have this engagement. It's called a road mapping session where we sit down for 60 minutes. We put it all on the table. We do some brainstorming. I walk us through this. I lead the discussion. And then I turn around and give you a report detailing exactly what we uncovered, what my recommendations are, and what I believe we should focus on and what that would look like. And you charge $800 for that, where before you may have given it away. So messaging, same thing, a key message platform. Ideation. Hey, let's figure out the next quarter's worth of ideas and content, right? Now, because you're getting paid, you can do a better job. You're going to feel better about it. And by the way, they're going to feel better about the recommendations because they paid you for that, as opposed to, oh, he prescribed too early before he really or she really diagnosed, because they were trying to, they were doing it for free. So it's going to be more and more important that we recognize this value and that we start selling it as standalone engagements.
I love that. There's so much value in clarity, right? I mean, I feel like we are just,
There is.
there was so much, there's always been, I think, since the internet, overwhelm, this idea of overwhelm, but now even more so with Slack channels and Facebook groups and WhatsApp and, forums here. And there's just, it's so much. So I think for a lot of clients, that is so valuable to have a professional who knows this stuff, who has that talent for figuring out how to take a message out, how to make it concise, and make it resonate with the audience. So many times you see the client, they just want to talk about themselves and they're not focused on who they really serve. And so I just see that clarity that we can offer and package for them. That is priceless. That helps them. And I think by being engaging kind of earlier when you were talking about diagnosing, and then here's the prescription. So later on down the line, when we're producing whatever the content is, I feel like you'll probably have less edits and pushback because they bought in earlier, you know. So I love that advice. And I
Yes,
think that's huge, Ed. That's awesome. Very
absolutely. You're
cool.
right. They have paid for it. They were invested in it,
Right.
and they see the process that well, they see what went into the
Mm.
whole thing and making a
Hmm.
decision, you know. And again, all I'm asking is that you formalize this a little better. The
Mm.
how doesn't really matter as much, you know. I think you can easily, one of the easiest ways to start is with project road mapping, helping a client who's trying to make a decision as to what to do to solve a problem, help them identify the thing to focus on.
Mm.
And even if you charge $300, $500, doesn't really matter. The moment you charge for that, your world is going to change, because now you're going to see and prove to yourself, wow, somebody paid me for my guidance. I was giving that away for years.
Yeah.
And now you're going to see yourself and your value very differently.
Beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. You touched on fees a little bit before about, you know, how AI and how these tools that are making it maybe easier or faster, more efficient. We talk about fees a lot, where I feel like that's rates. What do you charge for this? What do you charge for this? That's such a topic within the writer community. And you talked about this a lot on your own podcast, High Income Business Writing Podcast. How do you have any just quick tips for our listeners about strategies that you use to kind of arrive at the optimal fees for some of these services?
Yeah, it's a big topic. So I guess I'll pick a couple of things that I think anyone could apply. One of them is, if you're charging by the hour right now, one of the most important things you could ever do for your business is to move to a fixed fee model. Okay, that right there is a game changer. And listen, when I say that, I don't mean that if you have clients already, you know, who work within your hourly model, that you have to change that. The easiest way to change it is with new prospects, you know, with new clients, because they don't know how you charge or
Mm-hmm.
what you charge. So don't feel like, well, that's impossible because my clients will never go for that. Just start with new people. So that to me is the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit in the pricing arena. The second thing is to, okay, well, great. How do I determine what to charge? Because now I have skin in the game. You know, now I'm taking a risk. If I say 1,500 and it takes me a lot longer than I thought, then, you know, I'm not making as much. Well, what you need to do is you need to create what I call a master fee schedule, which is an internal document. Think of it as an internal menu of things you do or
Mm-hmm.
can do, and then a fee range for each, right? So kind of the minimum and the maximum. So case study, anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000, let's say. It's not something you publish, but at least you know. And then what you do is you start by listing all the things you do, best guess as to the ranges for each. And then as you start quoting and doing, that informs how you then adjust and refine those prices. Like, let's go back to case studies. When I started doing that, I hadn't done a case study before, and I put in there in my internal fee schedule, I don't know, between 700 and 1,000. And as I started doing them, somebody gave me a shot, right? So I did one, and I realized, okay, this took me a long, long time.
Yeah.
It was not profitable, but that's okay. I'm learning how to do it. But after the third or fourth, I realized 700 to 1,000 is way too cheap. So that informed the fee, and then I updated it to between, I think I did 1,000 to 1,250, you know, and then I kind of settled on a fixed fee of 1,250, and then I went from 1,250 to 1,750, you know, as time went on. So you inform based on what you're seeing. You ask colleagues. This is why it's so important to have a network of fellow writers who are kind of on the same wavelength, you know, like make sure that you align yourself and you stay in touch with people who have the same philosophy, who are looking to grow. who are not scarcity minded. They have more abundant thinking, and you kind of help each other out. I had several colleagues. I would email all the time, hey, listen, what do you charge for this? Can you give me a range? And then I would see what they charge, and I would then refine what I had. So a master fee schedule is one of the best ways to do this. And then you'll see that your internal hourly rate suddenly can go up from, maybe you were charging $80 before because you had to quote that, right? But once you don't quote that, it's an internal thing. It's an internal hourly rate. Your internal hourly rate could easily go up 150, 200, 250. I got a coaching client. Her average is close to $500 an hour. Wow. I mean, it's crazy. And again, it happens because you're charging a fixed fee for a fixed scope of work.
That's fantastic. Talk about inspiring, for a lot of people. And just really, I feel like there's been so many stereotypes, I guess, about writers, about us as starving artists, or just like what you were talking about, that scarcity mindset, I feel like has dominated a lot of conversations in the writer community. And really, I mean, you've always kind of taken that approach about value, about impact, about abundance, about collaboration. And I think that is the way that we not only survive, these changes and whatever life throws at us, whether it's inflation or pandemic or AI, but that's how we thrive too. I love that message. Mm-hmm. I know that you, in some of your earlier podcasts, you kind of talk about the reasons, for going freelance, about wanting to spend more time with your family at the time. I know your son is now a man, compared to when you started. A lot of our listeners are women. A lot are moms or caregivers. Maybe they're caring for elderly parents or loved ones. What specific advice do you have for them as they navigate the challenges and opportunities in freelance while also being a caregiver of some type?
That could be the topic of a 2-day workshop.
Let's do it.
Right? I think it's a very important thing, and there's a lot to unpack there. But let me start with what first comes to mind is something that might feel counterintuitive, or maybe something a lot of people don't really think about, which is create a list of business standards and non-negotiables. Here again, this is an internal document, not necessarily something you publish on your website, but I want everyone listening, if they haven't done this before, to make an appointment with themselves, 30 minutes, just start with 30 minutes and take out your journal or a notebook and write at the top, my business standards and non-negotiables. And I want you to just start writing free form, stream of consciousness in this format. I will not blank, or I will blank, or I stand for blank. So any of those, there is something along those lines. If you're not clear about what your business is about, or what it needs to enable you to do, or what kind of lifestyle it needs to be able to provide for you, your clients are going to make that determination for you, your clients and prospects. So you need to take charge. You need to get clear. You need to write it out. What are you not willing to negotiate on? I will not do rush work, for instance. I will not work with agencies. I only work with clients who truly respect me as a professional and treat me in a courteous way. Whatever, you decide. And it starts there, because you need those internal guardrails to make good decisions. Then that carries into the next thing, which would be use that to inform a list of boundaries that you're going to establish with clients, and that you're going to not just establish, but uphold. Now, that can be something that's outward facing. You could have some of that in your website. You could have it in your agreement. You could use it in conversations with new clients, but just let them know, this is how I work. This is what I commit to you. And this is what I ask of you, in return. And let them know. And it's important that you uphold those boundaries, because I find that many of us, especially in this, because we're in the service industry, it's like we're here to serve. And
Yeah.
most of us are recovering people pleasers.
Right.
And it's very important that we uphold those boundaries. If you don't, that's when, to your point, because the question was about, um, how do you prevent these things from spilling over into your personal life? You are responsible for that. You need to set those boundaries and you need to uphold those boundaries. If you can do that, then this business becomes sustainable. If you don't, you will create the worst job on the planet with the most tyrannical boss ever. The boss being you,
Yes.
not
Fire
not your
that
client.
boss. Right. That is so profound. I think that it is might sound counterintuitive, but it is true because that's the work, right? When you were saying uphold, that's the hardest part about boundaries. We've heard that's become like a buzzword in the last several years, but the enforcing part, the upholding part, it's easy for us to kind of say, this is what I want to do, but then when it comes time, when there are these last minute requests from our clients or needs from people that we love, enforcing it. That's the test, I think. I love this conversation, Ed. I know that you have your podcast. You also have this great ebook, Earn More in Less Time, that's available for free on your website. How can listeners learn more about your projects? What do you have coming up in the next months, weeks, and how can people learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. The best thing you could do is just go to my website, b2blauncher.com, and just download my free book, Earn More in Less Time. It's a meaty book. It's about 100 pages. I mean, so it depends on your definition of meaty, but I think that's really the best introduction into my strategies, my tactics, techniques, advice. Again, completely free. So grab a copy of that. I get compliments every week. People who said, "Man, just this alone has really changed my thinking around how I need to run my business and what's possible for me." So definitely grab that. The other thing I was going to mention is I have as you mentioned, my podcast, High Income Business Writing, completely free. Publish 2 episodes a month. It's been running for 10 and a half years now. There's a huge archive of podcast episodes there that I invite people to check out. Subscribe to the show, and you'll get them through whatever platform you use. And then the last thing would be I've noticed over the past few years that one of the things that most freelance writers and copywriters are missing is business skills. Business skills. We talked earlier about, right? I came to it kind of with an unfair advantage because I was already thinking business. I'd come from the corporate world, but I find that more and more, it's so critical that you work on your business skills and not rely on your writing skills. I see too many people thinking, okay, so the secret is going to be to become a better writer. That's always great, but there's a ceiling to what that will give you. And I would urge everyone to start working on their business skills. And so I've created a business building toolkit, extremely affordable, one of the cheapest things I've ever offered, of 8 different, basically skills, business skills that everyone needs to develop. And what I've done is not only has it become extremely affordable, but then I'm giving you the 20% that will make 80% of the difference in an hour. So it's a 1-hour session. Each of the 8 is 1 hour or less. And you will get, again, what will make the biggest difference in a very short period of time. I think we're all too busy to go through a ton of courses. I basically created with that in mind, the fact that people just need to get what they need to get quickly so they can start implementing that stuff right away. So that's also available. Also, my website, just that's all new. So check that out as well and see if that might be something to consider.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for everything that you've done I know you've been working in the space more than 10 years, more than the podcast in itself. You've made a big impact on the lives of so many writers and allowed them to kind of imagine a different reality for themselves. Talk about impact, talk about economic impact, personal impact. So thank you for being you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. No, truly, it was a pleasure being here. Thanks.